Have you ever spent all day and long hours and doing hard work trying to maintain your yard, whether that be trimming hedges or cutting down limbs of trees or trying to cut a log to make some firewood? Well, what I told you that you can get all this accomplished in a fraction of the time and a fraction of exertion. But today I'm going to show you how to use a chainsaw. In my speech, I will talk about the safety concerns using a chainsaw. I will talk about the parts and maintenance of a chainsaw, and then I will demonstrate how to properly use a chainsaw. Knowing how to use a chainsaw is very important, especially for any homeowner, because a lot of times you have to follow the city's rules when it comes to maintaining your yard. And like I said before, a lot of times you have to trim your hedges a certain way. Make sure your tree limbs aren't getting way too spread out into other people's yards. And it's also just an important skill to have in life. You never know when you're gonna need one. First, I'll talk about the safety concerns and the safety guidelines. Secondly, I will talk about the parts and maintaining it. And thirdly, I will talk about the best way to use a chainsaw, and I will demonstrate how to use it. So now let's talk about safety. Safety is the most important thing when using a chainsaw. I know a chainsaw can be very intimidating for some people, and that's for good reason, because it can be a dangerous tool. But just following safety guidelines can greatly reduce the risk of any injuries while using the chainsaw, according to OSHA. So let's talk about the first thing when it comes to it. Never use a chainsaw for anything that you don't have the skill for. What I mean by that is, don't use it while you're in a ladder. Don't use it on any trees after a storm where you can still have a branch fall. And for another example would be, don't ever use it on a tree that's still rooted, that's leaning down, because as soon as you cut the weight off that tree could shoot right back up and it could cause a very serious injury. Always wear proper protective equipment, so PPE. That includes steel-toe boots, a hard hat, gloves, and eyeglasses, like I have right here. The third thing is always make sure your area is clear, that you're not going to trip over anything, and that you don't have any hanging branches that could potentially fall on you. But now let's talk about the maintenance. So it's always important to maintain your chainsaw. This includes keeping it clean, keeping it full of oil. It's also very important to know the parts. So just be able to distinguish different parts when you're searching online for a new part, whenever you're trying to describe if something seems broken to a professional. And just to hit on that, never try to repair a chainsaw yourself. All services should be done by a professional, and that's according to Portland themselves. Okay, so let me show you about the parts of a chainsaw. So firstly, we have the bar. This is the nose of the bar. Then we have the chain itself. Right here on top, on this little crevice where the chain falls, that's just known as its chain guide, or as the bar guide for the chain. Then we have the guards right here. We have the rear guard and the front guard to protect your hands. We have the oil cap right here, is where oil goes. And then you have your safety that you hold forward, and the trigger. When you hold the safety forward and you pull the trigger, that's what turns the chainsaw on. And then last, we have the cord, because it's an electric chainsaw. Okay, and then just always make sure that you're oiling this machine. The oil is to keep the chain lubricated, and that's also very important for it. Okay, and then let's talk about the chain real quick. Just to show you again, this is the chain. Whenever you're replacing the chain goes a certain way. It goes in a certain direction. All chains bars will usually just have the direction right here. And whenever you replace it, all you gotta do is remove this guard right here, and then you can loosen the screw. And that's what loosens up the chainsaw and replaces it. Now I'm going to demonstrate how would you cut a log for firewood. Almost any type of wood will be good for firewood. This includes softwood or hardwood. Softwood is good for being able to get the wood burning fast, so it's going to heat up a lot faster. And hardwood is good for making the fire last longer. Now, before you start the chainsaw, always make sure that you have good tension. You can test this just by pulling it up, and when it goes back down in place, you know you have good tension. So whenever you're going to start a cut, make sure you're going at full power, and you're never going with the nose first. This is to avoid kickback. So you always want to cut horizontally and with the middle part of the bar or towards the back. So whenever you're cutting, you want to go down. If it's going to be a thick wood, you want to go down about 3/4 of the way before you stop and pull it back up. This is just to prevent the chain from getting stuck. And then once you're 3/4 of the way, you're going to roll the log and do the other side. So this pretty much concludes my speech. I pretty much just talked about the safety concerns of using the chainsaw. Then I talked about maintenance and parts, and then I just demonstrated right now how you would cut a log. Using a chainsaw is very simple. It can be dangerous, but as long as you're following all the safety guidelines, you will be safe and you shouldn't go through any injury. The chainsaw has been very important to me just because I like maintaining the yard, making sure that no trees are getting too spread out, and it could also be a fun experience. And you can also save money doing this and save a lot of time. This concludes my speech, and thank you.